September 6th, 2018, Jupiter, Florida. Burt Reynolds died at 82 years old. He suffered a heart attack at Jupiter Medical Center, the same hospital he had been in and out of for months. His family knew the end was near. The doctors had warned them, but knowing something is coming does not make it hurt any less. The news spread like wildfire. TMZ was the first to report it. Then everyone else followed. Social media exploded. Messages and tributes came from everywhere. Presidents, actors, football players, and ordinary people who had grown up watching Smokey and the Bandit, Deliverance, and Boogie Nights. Burt Reynolds was gone. He was the last of a particular kind of movie star, a star known for his charisma, for that laugh, for that mustache, for making everything look easy, even when it wasn't. Clint Eastwood learned the news while editing a film. Someone knocked on the door. It was his assistant. She looked shaken. "Burt Reynolds has died," she said. Clint stopped what he was doing and leaned back in his chair. He didn't say anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, he asked, "When?" "This morning." "A heart attack," his assistant added. Clint nodded. "All right, thank you for telling me." She left. Clint remained alone in the editing room, staring at the screen but not really seeing it. He had known Burt for 50 years, since the 1960s, when they were both struggling actors, both trying to get work, both being told they would never become stars. They stayed friends through everything, through marriages, divorces, good years and bad years in their careers, through Hollywood changing around them, through growing older while everyone else seemed to stay young. Now Burt was gone, and Clint was 88 years old. Each year there were fewer people left who remembered how it had all begun. Clint shut down the editing equipment and went home. He called Burt's family. He told them he was sorry. He asked about the funeral. "It's going to be small," Burt's niece said. "Mostly family, a few close friends." He didn't want anything big. He didn't want a spectacle. "When is it?" Clint asked. "Friday in Florida. I can send you the details." "I'll be there." "Mr. Eastwood, you don't need to fly all the way to Florida. We know you're busy." "I'll be there," Clint repeated. "Burt was my friend. I'm not going to miss his funeral." The funeral was scheduled for September 14th, a week after Burt's death. It would be a small service at a funeral home in Jupiter, followed by a burial at a nearby cemetery. Clint flew to Florida on Thursday, alone. No assistant, no security, just Clint on a regular commercial flight, sitting in first class reading a book. Some people recognized him, looked at him, but no one bothered him. He checked into a small hotel near the funeral home. Nothing fancy, the kind of place Burt would have liked. That night, Clint couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Burt, about the last time they had spoken. 3 months earlier, Burt had called him from the hospital. "I'm dying, Clint," Burt had said. His voice was weak, nothing like the strong voice from the movies. "You've been dying for 20 years, Clint had replied. "You're too stubborn to actually do it." Burt laughed. That laugh, even tired, even sick, still sounded like Burt. "Not this time. This time it's real. The doctors say weeks, maybe a month." "What do you need?" Clint asked. "Nothing. I just wanted to hear your voice. And I wanted to tell you something." "What?" "You're the only one who really made it, Clint. The only one from our generation who's still working, still relevant, still making good movies. I have enormous respect for that." "You made it too," Clint said. "No, I had some good years, some successful films, but my peak was in the 70s. I've been sliding ever since." "You never peaked. You just kept getting better, evolving. That's the difference." "Burt, let me finish. I'm dying. I have the right to say what I want. You're the real thing, the genuine article, and I'm proud to have known you, proud to have been your friend." Clint's voice broke. "I'm proud to have known you too." "Good. Now get back to work. Stop wasting time talking to a dying man." They hung up. That was the last time they spoke. On the morning of Friday, September 14th, the funeral home was small. Maybe it could hold 100 people. There were about 40. Family, a few actors, some people from Burt's football days, his ex-wife Lonnie Anderson, his son Quentin. Clint arrived early, wearing a dark suit, black tie, sunglasses, even indoors, trying to keep some privacy. People recognized him immediately. They whispered, pointed. Clint Eastwood was there for Burt. That meant something. Burt's niece greeted him. "Mr. Eastwood, thank you for coming. Where do you need me to sit?" "There are seats up front reserved for close friends." Clint sat in the second row behind the family, beside other actors who had worked with Burt over the years. They nodded to each other. They didn't talk much. What was there to say? The service began at 10. A minister spoke. He talked about Burt's life, his career, his family. Then Quentin, Burt's son, spoke. He talked about growing up with Burt Reynolds as a father. The good times, the hard times, the reconciliations, the love. People cried, quiet tears. Then the minister asked if anyone else wanted to speak, to say a few words, to share a memory. No one moved. Clint stood up. All heads turned. Clint Eastwood was going to speak about Burt Reynolds. He walked to the front, stood behind the podium, looked at the casket, at Burt lying there, looking peaceful, as if he were asleep. Then Clint did something no one expected. He stepped away from the podium, walked to the casket, placed his hand on it, and simply stood there. Without saying anything, the room fell silent. Then Clint began to speak quietly, as if he were having a private conversation with Burt. "You always made me laugh," Clint said. "From the first day I met you on that commercial shoot in '64. You were doing a car commercial. I was doing something else. Same building, different studios. I saw you in the hallway. You were complaining about the script out loud, making everyone laugh, even while insulting their work." People smiled. "You came up to me," Clint continued, "and said, 'You're that cowboy from that TV show, the one who squints a lot.' I said, 'Yeah.' You said, 'That's not acting, that's just bad eyesight.' I said, 'At least I'm not selling cars.' You laughed and said, 'We're all selling something. Might as well get paid for it.'" Clint paused, his hand still resting on the casket. "We became friends that day, insulting each other. Two broke actors trying to make it, understanding that Hollywood didn't care about either of us. We had to make them care." He looked at the crowd. Burt made them care. He became one of the biggest stars in the world, not by being someone else, but by being himself, by being charismatic, funny, honest, real. He didn't hide behind his characters. He let people see the real him, and they loved him for it. Clint's voice cracked slightly, but everyone heard him. "I'm going to miss him. Miss his laugh, miss his stories, miss his friendship. Miss having someone who remembered when neither of us were anybody, when we were both just trying to survive." He turned back toward the casket. "You told me I was the only one who really made it, the only one who stayed relevant. But you made it too, Burt, bigger than most of us ever will. You made people happy. You made them laugh. You made them feel good. That's harder than making them think. Harder than making them cry. You gave them joy, and that's everything." Clint stood there, his hand resting on the casket, unmoving, silent, simply saying goodbye. Then he did something else no one expected. He leaned down, kissed the casket, whispered something no one else could hear, and returned to his seat. The room was silent. People were openly crying now, not trying to hide it, not embarrassed, just crying. They had just seen Clint Eastwood, the man who never showed emotion, break for his friend. Show vulnerability, show love, show what 50 years of friendship looks like when it ends. The service continued, but nothing else really mattered. Everyone was still processing what they had witnessed. Clint's farewell, his tribute, his tears. Afterward, they drove to the cemetery, a small procession, maybe 10 cars. Clint rode in one of them, still quiet, still thinking. At the graveside, they lowered the casket into the ground, said prayers, tossed handfuls of dirt, performed all the rituals that mark an ending. Clint stood toward the back, watching, not participating, just being present. When it was over, when people began walking back to their cars, Clint stayed behind. He stood alone by the grave. Burt's niece approached him. "Mr. Eastwood, we're heading to the house for food. You're welcome to join us." "I'll be there in a minute. I just need a moment." She left. Clint stood looking at the grave, at the fresh dirt, at the flowers people had thrown in. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an old, faded black and white photograph. Two young men smiling with their arms around each other, Clint and Burt. Probably from 1965, barely recognizable, young, hopeful, broke. He looked at it, looked at who they used to be, looked at everything that had happened since. Then he dropped it into the grave, onto the casket, a piece of the past buried with his friend. "See you on the other side," Clint said quietly, to himself, to Burt. He walked back to his car and drove to Burt's house, to the gathering where family and friends were eating, talking, sharing stories. Clint stayed for 3 hours, longer than anyone expected, sitting in a corner, listening to people talk about Burt, about memories, about the good times. Quentin, Burt's son, sat beside him. "Thank you for what you said at the funeral. It meant everything. Your father was my friend. I meant every word. He talked about you a lot, especially toward the end. He said you were the only one who really understood, who had been through the same things, who knew what it was like. To be a legend, to get older, to watch the world change, to feel irrelevant. He said you were the only one who never made him feel old, who treated him like he still mattered." Clint nodded. He did matter, until the end. Clint flew back to California. The next day he returned to work, to editing his film, to his routine. But something had shifted. He couldn't stop thinking about Burt, about what Quentin had said, about feeling irrelevant, about aging. Burt had struggled with that. He had watched his career fade, taken roles he didn't want because he needed money, done reality shows, commercials, anything to stay visible. And it had eaten at him. Knowing his best days were behind him. Knowing people didn't want Burt Reynolds anymore, they wanted the memory of Burt Reynolds, the younger version, the charismatic version, the one who no longer existed. Clint had avoided that, staying relevant, continuing to work, evolving. But at what cost? He was 88 years old, still making movies, still directing, still refusing to slow down. Was he avoiding Burt's fate, or just delaying it? 2 weeks after the funeral, Clint received a package from Burt's estate, a letter and something else. The letter was from Burt, written a month before he died. The handwriting shaky, weak, but readable. "Clint, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you came to my funeral. I knew you would. You're too stubborn not to. I wanted to give you something I've kept for 50 years, something that meant more to me than any award or trophy. Do you remember that commercial shoot in '64 where we met? They gave us both a Polaroid that day, some promotional thing. We took that picture, two unknown actors goofing around, being idiots. I kept my copy, framed it, put it on my desk, looked at it every day for 50 years. It reminded me who I was before the fame, before the money, before everything. It reminded me I used to be hungry, used to be real, used to have friends who knew me when I was nobody. You were that friend, the only one who stayed, the only one who didn't change, the only one who still treated me like Burt Reynolds. I'm giving you my copy of that photo because you should have it, because you'll understand what it represents. We made it, Clint. From that hallway in '64 to the top of Hollywood, we made it. And we stayed friends the whole way. That's rarer than any Oscar, more valuable than any box office record. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for never changing. Thank you for being you. See you on the other side. Save me a seat. We'll have stories to tell. Burt." Inside the package was the photograph, the same one Clint had dropped into Burt's grave, except this was Burt's copy, framed, the glass cracked from years of handling, but preserved, loved. Clint stared at the two young men, at everything they had become, at everything they had lost, at everything they had kept. He called Quentin. I received the package. I know. He made me promise to send it after the funeral, after you'd been there. He wanted you to have it. Thank you. Mr. Eastwood, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you throw your copy into the grave? Your copy of that same photo? Clint was silent for a moment. Because part of me died with your father. The part that remembered being young, hungry, hopeful. That part isn't here anymore, and I wanted it buried with him. Quentin's voice broke. He loved you. You know that, right? I know. I loved him too. They hung up. Clint sat there holding Burt's photograph, the last piece of his friend, the last connection to who they once were. He placed it on his desk, right where he could see it, where Burt had kept it for 50 years. And every day since then, Clint looks at it, remembers, honors his friend. 3 months after Burt's death, Clint was giving an interview to promote his latest film. The interviewer asked about Burt, about the funeral. You gave a beautiful tribute, the interviewer said. Very emotional. People were surprised. You're not known for showing emotion publicly. Burt was my friend for 50 years. That deserves emotion. What do you miss most about him? Clint thought about it. His laugh. His ability to find humor in everything, even death. He called me from the hospital 3 months before he died. Told me he was dying, then made jokes about it. That was Burt. He never took himself too seriously. He never let the darkness win. He struggled in his final years, professionally and financially. Did that affect your friendship? The interviewer asked. No, I didn't care whether he was making hit movies or car commercials. He was still Burt, still the same guy I met in '64. Success didn't change him. Failure didn't change him. He was consistent. Do you think about your own mortality, your own legacy? Clint smiled. Every day. I'm 88 years old. I know my time is limited, but Burt taught me something. He taught me that legacy isn't about how many movies you make or how much money you earn. It's about the relationships you build, the people you love, the friends you keep. By that measure, Burt's legacy is enormous because everyone who knew him loved him, including you, especially me. That interview went viral. Millions of views. People who had never heard of Burt Reynolds were moved by Clint's tribute, by the friendship, by the love. The comments poured in. I'm crying. This is beautiful. Clint Eastwood talking about love and friendship is the most human I've ever seen him. This is what real friendship looks like. Rest in peace, Burt Reynolds. You had a true friend. Clint saw the comments. He didn't care about the views. He had said what he needed to say. He had honored his friend. That was enough. 1 year after Burt's death, Clint dedicated a film to him, a small, independent movie about friendship, aging, and goodbye. The dedication at the end read, For Burt Reynolds, who taught me that making people laugh is harder than making them think, who was my friend for 50 years, whom I will miss until my last day. See you on the other side. The film premiered in a small theater in Florida, near Jupiter, near where Burt was buried. Clint sat in the back, watching the audience's reaction. When the movie ended, when the credits rolled, when people saw the dedication, the entire theater stood and applauded, not just for the film, but for Burt, for Clint, for the friendship. Clint slipped out before the lights came on and drove to the cemetery. He stood at Burt's grave. They liked it, he said to the headstone. The movie, your tribute. They understood what you meant to me. He stood there for an hour, just being with his friend, talking to him, remembering. Before leaving, he took out a new photograph, one from the premiere. Clint standing in front of the theater, the dedication visible on the screen behind him. He placed it on the grave, Another memory, another moment, another piece of their friendship preserved. Clint is 94 now, still working, still making films, still remembering Burt. Every year on September 6th, the anniversary of Burt's death, Clint takes the day off. No work, no meetings. He simply sits with the photograph from 1964, the one Burt kept for 50 years. His children once asked him about it. "Dad, why do you do this? Why take a day off for someone who's been gone for years?" "Because he was my friend. Because friendship doesn't end just because someone dies. Because I owe him that." "But he's not here anymore." "Yes, he is. Every time I look at that photo, every time I remember his laugh, every time I make someone else laugh because he taught me how, he's here, and he always will be." Last year, Clint started a scholarship fund, the Burt Reynolds Performing Arts Scholarship, for young actors, for people trying to make it, for people who were where Clint and Burt were in '64. "Burt would have liked this," Clint told reporters, "helping people who are hungry, who are struggling, who just need a shot. That's who we were. That's what someone gave us. Now we return the favor." The scholarship has helped dozens of young actors, paying for classes, headshots, rent when they couldn't afford it, the things that make the difference between making it and giving up. And each recipient receives the same thing along with their scholarship: a copy of that photograph. Clint and Burt, 1964. Two hungry actors about to change the world. With a note: this is what friendship looks like. This is what supporting each other looks like. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget who helped you. And when you make it, help someone else. That is Burt's legacy. Not Smokey and the Bandit, not Deliverance, not the movies, the fame, or the money, but friendship, loyalty, love, and Clint keeping it alive every day, every film, every young actor he helps. Every time he looks at that photograph and remembers what it was like to be young, broke, and hopeful beside someone who became his brother. On September 6, 2018, Burt Reynolds died, and Clint Eastwood lost his best friend, the person who had known him the longest, who knew him best, who saw him before he was Clint Eastwood and loved him anyway. The funeral was small, private, just family and close friends, just the way Burt wanted it. But what Clint did there, what he said, what he shared, what he showed, that was big. It was a testimony to 50 years of friendship that could not be hidden, even if he had tried. He spoke from the heart. He broke down. He showed emotion. He showed love. He showed that beneath the tough guy exterior was a man who loved his friend, who missed his friend, who would carry him for as long as he had left. That's what left everyone in tears. Not Burt's death. Death is expected. Death is natural. But that love, that friendship, that loyalty that spanned 50 years, that is rare. That is special. That is worth crying for. Burt and Clint showed what real friendship looks like. In that hallway in '64, at that funeral in 2018, and every year in between. Friendship doesn't end. It just changes form. It lives in memories, in photographs, in scholarships, in stories told by a 94-year-old man who still misses his friend every day. That's the real story. Not the movies, not the fame, not the awards, but the friendship, the love, the bond that not even death could break. Clint proved it at Burt's funeral, at his grave, in his dedication, in his scholarship, in the way he still looks at that photograph every day and sees his friend, sees the beginning, sees the journey, sees the end, and sees that even though Burt is gone, the friendship remains. That's what left everyone in tears. Not the sadness, but the beauty. The beauty of a friendship that lasted. That mattered. That showed what's possible when you commit to someone and never let go. Even when death tries to separate you, even then, Clint doesn't let go. And maybe that's the greatest tribute of all. Not the words at a funeral, not the films dedicated to memory, but the daily choice to remember, to honor, to keep someone alive in your heart. That's what Clint does for Burt. Every day, every film, every photograph, every scholarship, every September 6th when he takes the day off and simply remembers. That's love. That's friendship. That's what endures. Clint and Burt proved it for 50 years, and the story continues.